The silent warning. The galaxy had long been the playground of powerful, proud civilizations, races that had dominated the stars for centuries, each with their own history of conquest and achievement. From the massive fleets of the Karen to the strategic brilliance of the Draken, no one had ever questioned their supremacy. To them, the idea of a small, isolated planet like Earth, even existing, was a matter of little importance. Earth had been forgotten by the galaxy, its people considered weak, their technology outdated, and their defenses laughable. No one thought they would ever pose a threat. But then, something strange happened. One day, a strange signal appeared in the vast emptiness of space. It wasn't a distress call or a message of surrender. It wasn't even a signal of war. It was simply a single, cryptic transmission. At first, no one thought much of it. The galaxy's most advanced monitoring systems had intercepted thousands of signals, some of them highly unusual, but most of them were either anomalies or harmless radio waves from distant stars. But this one was different. It came from Earth. The signal was clear, sharp, and precise. It didn't make sense at first, as Earth was not known for having the kind of technology to send such a message. But the signal kept repeating, growing louder each time it echoed through the galaxy's communication networks. The message was simple, yet it carried a weight that could not be ignored. A single phrase. "We are ready." It wasn't a request, nor was it a threat. It was a statement, a challenge. It raised more questions than it answered, and soon the most powerful leaders of the galaxy were gathered in secret meetings, their curiosity turning into concern. What could Earth possibly be signaling? What did they mean by, "We are ready"? The first to react were the Karen, the largest and most powerful race in the galaxy. They were warriors, bred for battle, and they had conquered countless systems. Their fleets had never faced an equal, and their reputation was one of fear and respect. If anyone were to respond to Earth's challenge, it would be them. The Karen were quick to send their scouts to investigate the source of the message, but they found nothing. The signal was gone as suddenly as it had appeared. The silence that followed left them uneasy. Across the galaxy, other races began to take notice. The Draken, who ruled through their cunning and intelligence, quickly dispatched their best agents to trace the origins of the message. They were the first to realize something strange. The signal hadn't just been a random burst. It was deliberate. It was calling attention, and it was aimed at them specifically. But why? What did Earth have that could make them send such a message? Meanwhile, the leaders of the Galactic Council gathered in an emergency session, unsure of what to make of the Earth signal. Some argued it was a hoax. Others speculated it was a trap, a trick designed to lure the galaxy's greatest races into a false sense of security. But the idea that Earth, a planet known for its primitive technologies, would be capable of such a thing was laughable to most. Yet the signal lingered in their minds, gnawing at them. In the days that followed, the signal began to change. No longer was it just a series of cryptic words. It evolved into a pattern, a sequence of messages that seemed to have a purpose. The transmission started to repeat in a regular rhythm, like a heartbeat, slow, steady, and unyielding. And then, for the first time, the message came with a new addition, a series of coordinates. Earth was no longer just calling out. It was giving directions, telling the galaxy where to find them. The galaxy's great races were still skeptical. After all, what could a single planet in a far corner of the universe do against the might of the galactic empire? But a sense of unease began to settle over the leaders. They knew something had changed. The silence of Earth had been shattered. The signal was no longer just a warning. It was an invitation, and they couldn't ignore it. On the bridge of the Karen's flagship, the command officer stared at the data, his eyes narrowing, as the coordinates blinked on the screen. He had seen many things in his time, but this was different. This wasn't a challenge to be laughed at. The galaxy had been united under the idea that Earth was weak. Now that belief was being questioned. The Karen's fleet would move out to investigate, but they had no idea what they were walking into. For the first time in centuries, they felt the cold grip of uncertainty. Far from the council chambers, in the darkness of space, a small fleet of Earth's ships began to take form. It was not much, just a handful of ships, old, outdated by galactic standards, but still formidable in their own right. These ships, once dismissed by the galaxy, were now preparing to send a message of their own. They would not be ignored. The people of Earth had built their own warships, designed with a quiet resolve and technology that, while rudimentary by galactic standards, had a deadly efficiency to it. They were ready for what came next. The galaxy's attention was now fully turned toward Earth. The question that loomed in everyone's mind was no longer, what is this message? But what is Earth preparing for? For so long, Earth had been left in the shadows, a forgotten speck on the map of the galaxy. But now, they had spoken up. And that single sentence, "We are ready," carried with it an ominous weight. The galaxy's proud leaders began to wonder, had they misjudged Earth all along? As the fleets of the galaxy began to gather and prepare to meet at the coordinates Earth had provided, they couldn't shake the feeling that something had been set into motion. They had been warned, but had they truly understood the message? Only time would tell. The galaxy's brightest minds were consumed with the question, what did Earth's message mean? The silence of Earth had been broken by that simple phrase, "We are ready," and now, the greatest powers of the galaxy were preparing to make the journey to the coordinates Earth had sent. Despite the skepticism, despite the disbelief that a planet like Earth could hold any true power, there was one undeniable truth. Earth had taken action, and now the galaxy had no choice but to respond. As the Karen fleet set course toward Earth, a sense of anticipation grew among the higher ranks. Their massive warships, capable of obliterating entire fleets with ease, moved with precision and purpose. The fleet's commander, Admiral Korek, was a seasoned veteran with decades of experience. He had seen countless battles, fought wars across galaxies, and brought entire star systems to heel. Yet, as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, even he could feel an unease settling in his chest. What if Earth had something they weren't prepared for? What if, against all odds, Earth was not as helpless as they had assumed? The Karen fleet was not alone. The Draken, known for their strategic brilliance and cunning, had dispatched their own ships, including some of the galaxy's most advanced vessels. Unlike the Karen, who relied on sheer might, the Draken relied on intelligence and subtlety. They were determined to figure out what Earth had planned, but they too were nervous. Every calculation, every move they made seemed to suggest that Earth wasn't acting out of desperation. They were acting with purpose. The message wasn't just a signal, it was a statement. In the midst of these larger fleets, a smaller group of ships began to take shape. The crew of the Earth fleet, despite their own doubts and fears, had spent years preparing for this moment. They had no illusions about their own strength compared to the galaxy's great powers, but their ships were equipped with an unusual form of technology. Not as advanced as the ships of the Karen or Draken, but each Earth warship was built with a special kind of ingenuity. These ships weren't just designed for combat. They were designed to endure. The people of Earth had learned to fight with what they had, making the most of every resource, every scrap of knowledge they could muster. The fleet that Earth sent was small, only 5 ships, each one heavily modified from their original designs. There was no denying that they were outdated. The galaxy's spies had reported that Earth had relied on Arctic technology, making their ships seem almost laughable. But there was something about them that made the galaxy's leaders uneasy. These ships were tough. They could take punishment and keep fighting. And if Earth was ready, as the message suggested, then the galaxy was in for a surprise. As the fleets closed in on the coordinates, the tension grew thicker. The space surrounding Earth was still eerily quiet, but now there was a sense of something waiting in the darkness. It was as though the galaxy's greatest warriors were walking straight into a trap. The Karen, the Draken, and the smaller races that had joined them were all on edge. There had been no response from Earth since the message, no further communication, no sign of life from the planet. Just silence. But even in silence, there was something threatening. Admiral Korek stood on the command deck of his flagship, staring at the stars outside the massive windows. The hum of the engines vibrated through the floor beneath his feet. His hands rested on the cool metal of the railing, his mind racing. What could Earth have possibly done to prepare? What had they hidden from the galaxy for so long? Korek's gut told him this wouldn't be like any other conquest. This wouldn't be an easy victory, even though it seemed like it should be. The Draken fleet, smaller but faster and more agile, moved in parallel. Their fleet commander, High General Vorn, was equally focused on the situation. He was a master strategist, and he had sent his best ships to the front. His ships were equipped with advanced cloaking technology and weapons that could strike before the enemy even knew they were there. But even Vorn had begun to doubt. Earth had been silent for so long. Could they truly have a hidden strength that would challenge the galaxy's mightiest forces? Or was this just another momentary flash of hope before the inevitable collapse? As the fleets neared the outskirts of Earth's space, something unexpected happened. The quiet was broken, not by the usual space chatter or communication signals, but by a sound. A low hum. It wasn't a ship's engines or any natural phenomenon. It came from somewhere deeper, somewhere closer. The signal that Earth had sent began to play again. But now, it wasn't just words. It was music. A strange, haunting melody that seemed to reverberate through the very fabric of space itself. It was unlike anything the galactic fleets had ever heard, and it sent a chill down the spines of those who listened. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a call to battle. It was something else, something that unsettled the very core of their beings. The music continued for a few moments, then stopped. A brief silence followed, before a new message appeared, broadcast across the fleet's communication systems. You were warned. We are waiting. The message was simple, but it was clear. Earth wasn't afraid. Earth wasn't hiding. Earth was ready. The message echoed in the minds of every fleet commander. The Karen fleet, the Draken ships, and the other smaller races now found themselves questioning their own preparations. Were they truly ready for what Earth had planned? Had they underestimated this small planet far from the center of the galaxy? For the first time, the galaxy's most powerful races found themselves uncertain. The pride they had built their empires on began to crack. Earth's fleets, despite their size, had sent a message with far more weight than any of the galaxy's rulers had expected. The game had changed. And now, the galaxy's great powers would learn what Earth had truly been hiding all along. The galaxy's greatest minds and fiercest warriors sat in tense silence as their ships approached Earth's solar system. The unknown weighed heavily on every ship. The fleet commanders, who had been so confident moments before, now found themselves gripped by a creeping unease. What had they truly unleashed by crossing the threshold into Earth's space? Admiral Korek of the Karen fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the swirling darkness of space outside the viewports. His fingers drummed softly on the control panel. The music that had played through the communication system still echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of Earth's strange power. No one had expected this. For a moment, Korek wondered if they had been too quick to assume victory. The calmness of Earth, the simplicity of the message, the eerie music, it all felt like the calm before a storm. But what kind of storm? Behind him, his officers shuffled nervously, their faces filled with the same doubts. For the first time in decades, they questioned their mission. The message Earth had sent wasn't a threat. It wasn't a boast. It was a promise. But what did it mean? What was Earth preparing? Vorn, the commander of the Draken fleet, stood in the command center of his ship. His sharp, angular features reflected the light from the digital readouts, his expression unreadable. His fleet, small but swift, was spread out across the sector, carefully surveying every inch of space. Their advanced sensors had been picking up nothing unusual, but the calmness only seemed to deepen the mystery. There was no movement from Earth's surface, no sign of defensive preparations, no massive weaponry aimed at the stars. It felt too quiet, too still. He turned to his chief strategist. "Have you detected anything?" Vorn's voice was calm, but there was a sharpness to it that belied his concern. "No, General," the strategist replied, his face illuminated by the glow of the tactical screens. "There's nothing. The Earth fleet is still out of sight. We've been scanning for hours, and nothing has changed." Vorn grunted in frustration. "Keep looking. They must be hiding something." The hours dragged on, each one filled with more questions and fewer answers. The silence was unbearable. And then, without warning, a single message crackled through the comm systems, jolting everyone into attention. The message came from Earth, but it wasn't directed at the fleets. It was something more subtle. A live feed, visual, raw, and unfiltered. It was a video of Earth's surface, showing peaceful landscapes, bustling cities, and busy people going about their daily lives. No sign of any military buildup, no ominous signals, no signs of an imminent attack. It was just life. And then the video paused. The screen cut to black. A single sentence appeared. "This is who we are." The message was baffling. What was the meaning behind it? The commanders of the Karen and Draken fleets exchanged glances. It was almost like Earth was mocking them. They had expected weapons, defense systems, armies prepared for battle. Instead, they were being shown ordinary life. What was Earth's point? Admiral Korek's face hardened. What are they trying to say? He muttered under his breath, but there was no one around him who could answer. Even after decades of dominating galactic affairs, he felt as though Earth had just introduced a new kind of warfare, one that wasn't about firepower, but about something much more unsettling. The silence stretched on for what seemed like hours. Then, without warning, the comms buzzed again. This time, it was Earth, but it wasn't a message. It was an image. A single ship, one that had been hidden in the shadows of space, emerged onto the screen. It was large, not enormous like the great warships of the Karen or Draken, but its sheer size was enough to stop everyone in their tracks. It was dark, sleek, and almost ghostly in its design, its silhouette outlined against the distant glow of a nearby star. The ship was Earth's most feared warship, the one that had been designed to be the last line of defense, the one they said no enemy would ever breach. The ship's engines hummed with power, and its weapons were a mystery to everyone, even those who had seen it in action. It was Earth's best-kept secret, one that had never been revealed to the galaxy's spies. For a moment, the video showed nothing more than the ship drifting through space. It was so quiet, so still, that it felt almost surreal. Then the message appeared across the screen. "This is what we've been hiding." The impact was immediate. The Karen fleet fell into chaos. The Draken, usually composed, found themselves at a loss for words. The very presence of Earth's ship changed everything. This wasn't just one of Earth's makeshift warships. It was something entirely different, something that could turn the tide of an entire war. Earth had kept it hidden, waiting for the right moment. And now, with that moment upon them, the galaxy's most powerful fleets suddenly realized they had made a grave mistake. Admiral Korek stood frozen, staring at the screen. His thoughts raced as the magnitude of the situation began to sink in. The Karen fleet had always been the most feared in the galaxy, but now, in the presence of Earth's warship, the reality was clear. They were facing something they hadn't prepared for. Something more powerful, more unexpected than anything they had ever imagined. And it wasn't just one ship. It was Earth's fleet, the fleet that had been underestimated, that had been laughed at, that had been written off as insignificant. Yet here they were, revealing their true power. The video ended abruptly, leaving the galaxy's greatest commanders speechless. Earth had not come to negotiate. They had not come to surrender. They had come to show the galaxy who they really were. And they were ready for whatever came next. The storm was coming. The silence after the message was deafening. The image of Earth's warship hung in the minds of the commanders across the galaxy like a shadow, haunting them with the terrifying realization that they had underestimated humanity. The fleets of the Karen and Draken continued to drift toward Earth's solar system, but now their path felt uncertain. Their confidence had evaporated, replaced by a growing dread. Admiral Korek was the first to break the silence. His hand trembled as he reached for the communication console, his usual strength replaced by a rare vulnerability. The thought that Earth, this small, insignificant planet in the vast expanse of the galaxy, had something that could challenge the might of his fleet, his greatest fleet, shook him to his core. "Prepare for full combat readiness," Korek commanded, his voice stern despite the fear lurking beneath. "We cannot underestimate them anymore. If we wait, it will be too late." In the Draken fleet, Vorn paced back and forth in his command center, his mind racing. The sight of Earth's warship had disrupted his calculations, leaving him unsure of how to proceed. They had not come here to make peace. They had not come here to negotiate. This was not the submission of a weak species. It was a declaration of war. "Is everyone prepared?" Vorn asked, his voice carrying an air of finality. "We can no longer afford to be cautious. We need to engage before they have time to fully mobilize." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. Earth had shown its hand, but there was so much more they still didn't know. The ship they had revealed was a symbol of power, yes, but how many more of these ships did they have hidden away? What else was Earth hiding from them? Both fleets moved slowly, cautiously, inching closer to the fringes of Earth's solar system. No one spoke openly of the fear that had taken root, but it was in the air, in every glance exchanged, in every calculated decision. They had expected a world that would crumble before their might, a people who would submit to the overwhelming force of the galactic powers. Instead, they were faced with a terrifying unknown, a power that had waited, hidden in the dark corners of the galaxy, ready to strike when the time was right. Suddenly, the quiet calm of space was broken by the sudden flash of energy. A burst of brilliant light streaked across the dark void, catching everyone by surprise. It wasn't an attack, but a signal, Earth's response to their growing movement toward its planet. On every ship, the message came through loud and clear, its words sending a chill through the crews of both the Karen and Draken fleets. "We are ready. You've made a mistake." There was no boasting in the message, no threats, only a certainty that reverberated across every fleet. Earth was not afraid. Earth was not desperate. Earth was ready. And now, every commander on every ship had to wrestle with a painful question. Were they truly prepared for what was about to come? The Karen and Draken fleets began to respond immediately. Their engines roared to life, and their weapons systems powered up, ready for battle. The confidence that had once filled the commanders' hearts began to shift into fear, but they had no choice but to move forward. They had underestimated Earth, and now they would pay the price. But as they prepared for battle, the Earth warship remained stationary, a silent sentinel, watching. There was no sign of an imminent attack, no sign of movement from Earth's fleet. The tension in the air was unbearable, but the fleet commanders knew one thing for certain. Earth's warship wasn't going to move until it was ready. Admiral Korek's voice crackled through the comms, filled with an unsettling mix of defiance and uncertainty. "Prepare to fire. All ships, engage at maximum range." And with that command, the fleets launched their assault, their ships surging forward, their weapons unleashing devastating firepower. But even as they advanced, every captain, every officer, and every soldier could feel the weight of their uncertainty. They had just opened fire on something they had no real understanding of. They had provoked Earth's greatest weapon, and now they would face the consequences. The Karen and Draken ships closed the distance, the battle lines forming in space, and the first volley of fire erupted into the void. Explosions lit up the stars, and the soundless chaos of battle began. Yet even as the energy blasts rained down, The Earth warship remained silent, unmoving, a lone force of quiet defiance in the middle of the storm. For what seemed like an eternity, the ships of the Karen and Draken fleets unleashed everything they had. But Earth's warship remained untouched. The massive energy blasts simply bounced off its shields, leaving no trace of damage. The warship didn't return fire. It didn't need to. It was the embodiment of control, of strength that needed no words. Every action, every maneuver, was a statement in itself. Then, with eerie calmness, a voice echoed over the comm systems. "This is Earth's wrath, and it has just begun." A burst of energy erupted from the Earth warship, an energy wave so powerful it cut through the vacuum of space like a razor. It hit the Karen flagship first, and within moments, the mighty ship was reduced to a fiery wreck. Its once mighty hull crumpled in on itself like paper. A single shot from Earth's warship had sent a shockwave through the galaxy's mightiest fleet, leaving it in ruins. Then came another wave, and another. The Draken fleet's attempts to regroup and retaliate were futile. The Earth warship unleashed wave after wave of energy, each blast sending entire ships spinning into the darkness. No amount of advanced technology or brute force could overcome the power that Earth had now unleashed. As the first waves of destruction tore through the enemy fleets, a cold realization swept across the galaxy. Earth's warship had done what no one thought possible. It had turned the tide of battle with one shot, with one wave of destruction. And the galaxy was about to learn that underestimating Earth had been their greatest mistake. The silent void of space was now filled with the sound of destruction. The once proud fleets of the Karen and Draken were reeling from the devastation brought by Earth's warship. Massive energy waves, each more powerful than the last, had ravaged their fleets, turning their ships into burning wrecks drifting through space. What had started as a calculated invasion had become a nightmare neither of these galactic powers could have predicted. Admiral Korek, commander of the Karen fleet, stood frozen in front of his console, unable to comprehend what he was witnessing. His fleet, his mighty fleet, with thousands of warships, was being torn apart by a single vessel. He had believed that no force in the galaxy could stand against them, yet Earth had proven him wrong. His people had fought wars across galaxies, conquering worlds, enslaving species, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Report," he barked, his voice trembling slightly. A communications officer, fear in his eyes, turned to him. "Admiral, all communications with the fleet are down. We've lost nearly half of our ships in the first wave. The remaining vessels are disorganized and fleeing the battle." "Retreat," Korek ordered with a heavy heart. He had fought many battles, but this one would be different. His forces, the once feared Karen fleet, had no chance against the unyielding might of Earth's warship. They were outmatched, outclassed, and now they would run. But even as the order to retreat was given, Korek knew it was too late. The Earth warship was relentless. It didn't need to chase down fleeing ships. It could strike at will, cutting them down one by one as they fled into the depths of space. The Karen forces, once the galaxy's top predators, were now the hunted. In the Draken fleet, Vorn, though no stranger to war, found himself in a similar position. His fleet had suffered massive losses, and the once celebrated might of the Draken people was crumbling before the power of a single Earth ship. The warships, their engines blazing with the last of their energy, were slowly retreating, trying to regroup and find some way to counterattack. But Vorn knew it was hopeless. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. "Admiral," a voice broke through his thoughts. A young officer, eyes wide with terror, stood by his side. "The remaining ships, some are disintegrating from the shock waves. Others are caught in gravitational distortions. We can't escape." Vorn's heart sank. There was no escape. Earth had proven itself a force of nature, an unstoppable entity that had swept through the fleets of both the Karen and the Draken without breaking a sweat. Every decision, Every move the galaxy's most powerful commanders had made in their attack on Earth was now being paid for in the debris of their fleets. He turned to the officer, his voice cold. "Send a message to all ships. Retreat to the nearest galaxy. We are no longer capable of continuing this mission." The officer nodded quickly, his hands trembling as he initiated the orders. But even as he did, both he and Vorn knew the truth. They were defeated. The warship from Earth had shown them that there was a force in the universe beyond their comprehension. And that force had not only stood its ground, it had obliterated everything in its path. As the Karen and Draken fleets scattered into the unknown, Earth's warship remained steady, unyielding. The massive ship didn't move. It didn't chase. It didn't need to. It was as if the ship itself were a symbol, a warning to anyone who would dare challenge the might of Earth. It was patient, watching the retreating ships with an icy calmness. But the war was not over. As the remaining alien forces limped away, something deep in the heart of the galaxy began to change. News of the Earth warship's devastating power spread like wildfire. Rumors and whispers echoed through every corner of the galaxy, reaching the ears of races and factions that had once considered Earth a primitive world. Now they looked at Earth with a mixture of fear, awe, and uncertainty. On Earth, the warship's captain stood on the bridge, watching the stars outside the ship's massive viewport. They had won, but the battle for Earth's survival had only just begun. There would be more. The galaxy's empires would not sit idle for long. The defeat of two of the galaxy's most powerful fleets would have repercussions that no one could yet foresee. Earth was no longer just a world. Earth had become a force. "We've shown them our strength," the captain said quietly, turning to the officers gathered at their stations. "But this is only the beginning. We must prepare for what's to come." A silent nod passed between the crew members. They understood. The galaxy had just been shown what Earth was capable of, but the real test was still ahead. They had won the first battle, but the war for Earth's future was far from over. And as the last of the enemy ships vanished into the distance, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again.